Hi, I'm Katie Morrell. I'm a creative and writer based in Bend, Oregon.
And I'm Karen Hawkins. I am the founder of Rebellious Magazine for Women and co-publisher and co-editor-in-chief of the Chicago Reader.
You are listening to Of Course I'm Not Okay, the podcast. Join us as we talk about mental health, coping with quarantine, and creativity.
For some of our episodes, we'll talk with writers, creatives, and activists to get their take. Thank you for joining us on this journey.
Karen, welcome to 2021!
Oh, I wish I had like a noisemaker, like a like one of those like.
I should have a hat on and like a little blower thing.
Happy New Year. I will tell you that I was listening to one of our recent episodes, and this is gross, you can cut it if you want. You were talking about New Year's Eve, and we were talking about Ryan Seacrest and the whole thing with the ball dropping.
Yes.
And the phrase ball drop made me laugh so hard later.
I mean, it is kind of funny.
It was like, anyway, lesbian humor for you. It made me laugh. And I don't know, it's January 4th as you're listening to this. We are recording it earlier than that. So I don't know what I'm doing for New Year's Eve. Is there going to be a Ryan Seacrest ball dropping situation? I don't know.
Great question. I don't know. I don't know if it'll be Ryan Seacrest. I don't know if it will be Mario Lopez. I don't know if it will be someone else that will be very exciting. I would love to have Kamala Harris ring in the new year on Zoom. I would tune in for that.
I would too.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's going to be something.
Yes, I'm sure there will be something. But yeah, I mean, okay, so it's January 4th. So we're 16, is that right? 16 days away from Inauguration Day. Yes.
Oh my God. The greatest White House eviction in the history of the United States.
That is absolutely true. And I am so excited. I'm also excited to hear how they do it, because I'm sure that there will be like a tremendous amount of pomp and circumstance, which of course there should be, but all of it being virtual, it'll be interesting. I think that, it'll be a producer's nightmare, but maybe it will be actually amazing. Who knows?
Yeah. I will say I enjoyed, somebody I follow on Twitter was referring to it as like, basically like people get evicted from public housing all the time. It's just like, yeah, get out.
Yeah.
I really, I'm kind of hoping that like he just sneaks out.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Like sneaks out like in the middle of the night, just kind of like nobody sees him. There's just like the next day newscasters are like, and he's gone. Like that was anticlimactic. That would be the best case scenario.
That is exactly like just like slinks off, the Secret Service carrying Melania's shoes out middle of the night. Just yes. Just disappear. Yeah.
Right. Like they're carrying her garment bags on each arm. Like, and the Secret Service, oh God, I really feel for those Secret Service that are going to be on them for the rest of their lives, or the rest of his life for sure. If she stays married to him, then the rest of her life as well. But I don't know. Oh boy. But yes, 16 days and counting. So maybe by the time this podcast comes out, it will be more apparent or public as to how and when Trump will be exiting his public housing situation. Oof. But yes, but I am very excited. I feel like there are many ways to think about a new year. Like, some people don't get into New Year's. That's cool. Some people absolutely love it. And it's the biggest thing of the year for them. But I kind of want to go on the positive route this year, just because last year was, wow, there are no words.
There are really no words. And I feel like as we think about the beginning of 2020, January of 2020, how clueless all of us were.
Oh my gosh. Also, how does that not feel? I mean, to me, it feels truly like 5 years ago, like truly.
Oh yeah, no, I was listening to my Spotify, like, what was your 2020 soundtrack? And I just thought like, that was a year ago. I was in wine country in California and discovered the magic of Dua Lipa and listened to her all of quarantine. I can't believe that was a year ago.
Can you believe that? Yes. I love Dua Lipa so much. She did a great job on SNL last weekend. Just small plug for Dua Lipa. The only thing that was like a little weird was she wore this enormous hat. I don't even know if you would call it a hat. It's like an art installation that made her look like a Portuguese man of war jellyfish. But like I don't know what was about. Twitter totally exploded. But anyway, love Dua Lipa, love her, really do.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
that was a year ago.
I know. A year ago, I was in Kauai on vacation, and I remember just like toasting Tyler on the beach. It was beautiful, and not really thinking much. Like it was just like, oh, it's another year. Like this is great. Like let's celebrate. But who knew? I mean, I remember seeing a couple weeks ago Stephen Colbert. It was like mid-December when this happened, but when the vaccine was coming out originally, and the very first person, I think it was an emergency room nurse in New York City, got the vaccine, and like of course that image was everywhere. And Stephen Colbert was on his show, broadcasting this video, and he like started getting teared up, and he's like, if you had told me 10 months ago that the most exciting video that I could show on my show that would actually make me literally tear up was an image of a woman getting a shot, like I wouldn't have believed you. Right? How the world has changed.
Well, and I just came across something I think I wrote, or maybe it was a news story, something in January of 2020, very vague about this weird thing happening in Asia. This like another SARS in Asia.
Yeah. I know. I remember reading about it, like I think it was around Christmas 2019, where it was like, oh, like people are quarantining in Wuhan, China. Like it was like, oh, that's pretty crazy. Like I hope they're okay. And like, but I never thought that it would completely transform my life. But here we are. Now we're in 2021, turning a new leaf. I mean, 2021, I'm actually excited. I feel really positive. I mean, thank goodness. Like Trump is going to be out of office, regardless of how he ends up getting out of office. Like, physically, I mean, Kamala, the first woman of color being in the White House, like, God damn, like, hell yes. Like, these are all positive things. Like, I really feel like the vaccine, the proliferation of how many people are getting it, like, there's just so many positive things to really look forward to this year. And like today, I know a lot of people who were privileged enough to take the week off. I know you and I took the week off before this week, and now we're going back to work today. And like, I feel refreshed. I'm excited.
You're helping me get there. I'm not there yet. I think you're right. You're totally right. I feel like I'm still stuck in, this, I have a very, I will admit, I have a very pessimistic view that as much as I want him to slink off into the night, that Trump is not going anywhere. He's taken over the Republican Party, and that they're just going to they're going to do as much as they can to continue to ruin our lives. Like, yeah. I feel like that's where I am, and I'm trying to get to this brighter place. But as we're recording this, he has just held up the stimulus package. So I'm feeling a certain kind of way about his ability to still impact our lives, even as he's getting booted.
Yeah.
But I'm getting there. I'm getting positive.
No, but I think that's real. And like, I appreciate your honesty, because I think that's where a lot of us, like, are also. It's like both things can be true. Like you can feel positive and excited, and you can feel like, what the hell? Like, come on. Like, is he seriously, like, he's going to go out kicking and screaming like a 2-year-old, child that's like hyped up on sugar? Like, it's like, what is going to actually happen? Like, and yes, I mean, we're recording this podcast a few weeks before the 4th of January when you're listening, listeners. So yeah, it's hard to be 100% positive 100% of the time. Like I want to stay in that place, and then sometimes I get sucked under, that's normal, I think.
Yeah, no, totally. I feel like we're a good balance right now.
Yeah.
You're walking into the light, and I'm sitting in the dark drinking a bottle of wine somebody left on the porch. It's fine. It's just good. Life is about balance.
Right. Life is about balance. Both feelings are valid. All of those things. I mean, I think for me, it's like I start almost every year with like, okay, I'm going to set some intentions. I don't really believe in New Year's resolutions. It was something that I kind of put by the wayside a couple of years ago, because I was just like, losing 10 pounds in 30 days and then gaining it all back, like, doesn't feel good to me. So I'm going to learn from that experience. So like, I mean, I have friends who have like words that they choose for the year or stuff like that. Like a friend of mine, she chose bliss for the year for 2020.
Ooh.
Here's the crazy thing, Karen, not crazy. It's wonderful. She like full on lived it, like for real. Like, yes, everything, her life is not perfect, as none of our lives are perfect. But she has some very acute, I'm not going to say anything specific about her, but she has some very acute challenges in her life. And it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting exercise. I have yet to, if I'm going to decide to have a word for my year or whatever. But it's an interesting thing for her to watch her stay in that place and to watch her be able to at least come back to it. Like there are some days that she wasn't, like it didn't happen. But there were some, but I think overarchingly, like she really tried to remember that at least.
I really appreciate that. And I do think setting intentions is really important because like you're saying, it gives you something to snap back to. Like your friend with the challenges, like that's a touchstone for her. Like that's a place she can come back to. Like I set an intention of bliss for this year. How do I get back there from where I am?
Today's episode is brought to you by my Joy and Vulnerability virtual writing workshops. So for a lot of you who have been listening to this podcast for a while, Karen and I do funny and not always serious, legitimate advertisements. This one is a little bit different. This is an actual ad. So me, Katie Morell, I host monthly writing workshops on the third Friday of every month. They're capped at 8 women and they're really, really fun. I did a lot of them in 2020 and I'm extending them to 2021 and I'm going to be actually building out a few more. But if you want to find out more, just go to my website. It's KatieMorell.com, KatieMorell.com. And I would love to have you. They're limited to women and they're 2 hours each. And we go through some really fun and easy writing prompts. And then we have judgment-free sharing where we talk about what we wrote, only if you want to. And then we have dance breaks that are 60 seconds long. And we dance to people like ABBA and Lizzo and Diana Ross and other people that are really, really fun. And then we wrap up. And I find that it helps people feel less alone. And a lot of the women who have taken my workshops, they rave about them and they're really great. So please join me. If you have any questions, you can always reach out via my website or on Instagram through NotOkPod or on Twitter. Thanks so much. What are the things, if anything, are there things that we want to bring into 2021 from 2020? Like from our work life or from a, is your cat okay? Oh God.
Oh my God, I don't even care if she's okay.
Yes, for listeners, one of Karen's cats is just really up in her grill right now.
Oh my God. She has boundary issues. We've talked about it. We've talked about body autonomy. We've talked about consent. She's not really interested in any of those cuts.
Any of those things. She's like, I don't have to pretend I hear you and understand all of your English words, even though she totally does. Oh my gosh. But yes, I mean, I think like, you know, when I think back to 2020 and I'm like, well, what do I want to bring from 2020 into 2021? It's easy to be like nothing. Like, yeah, a whole lot of nothing. But the truth is that speaking of boundaries, I actually think that that's one of the things that I mean, that's a constant challenge for me. And it's always been something that I've worked on in therapy and something that I've worked on in different relationships. But I do think that there's something around the fact that like the intentionality of 2020, where if you were going to get on a phone with someone, or if you were going to get on Zoom with them, like you were planning it in advance, like you were scheduling it into your calendar. There were no like stop-ins or like, let's go to the bar when you don't really want to, or that kind of thing that were happening. And like, so therefore I do think that there were some inherent boundaries with that.
That is very true. I think it's, speaking of like two things that are very different being true at the same time, I feel like we had those boundaries. And then we also had the fluidity of boundaries around work. in terms of
Yes.
like, you really had to be intentional about like, my workday has a beginning, a middle, and an end every day. And my work week has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I'm not going to just work all day, every day.
Yes.
And that my home is now my office, is now my work. And how do you create a boundary that like, okay, I sit here and I work, and then I go to the rest of my house, and that's where I live my life.
Yes. Yes. And I feel like for the people listening that are able to work from home and didn't work from home prior to COVID, and now maybe that is your daily reality, like even post COVID, like that's Tyler's reality, is like with COVID, of course he was going to work from home, but now it's like it's a permanent situation. I think one thing that's helped him and me is that we're very, very privileged to have offices where we have doors, and like those are the rooms that we're in when we're working, and that's it. Like we don't use those rooms, but we didn't have that before we moved to Oregon. Before we moved to Oregon, I or he was working at the kitchen table all the time. Like that was just what it
Wow.
was. And it was like my laptop was next to our dinner plate, like it's just like that's what it is. And so, but I do kind of wonder if some listeners feel like they were able to work around things, like able to protect those boundaries a little bit, like over the year. I hope they were, to then bring that into 2021 as like a learning.
Absolutely. Well, and to learn how to better juggle your work and your life. I hate work-life balance because I feel like it's a lie, but
Yeah.
I feel like just hopefully being able to put more boundaries around who you are at work and who you are at home.
Yes. Yes. That's a really hard one. And
Yeah.
I do think that I still, to this day, like I have been working for myself for almost 12 years and not going into an office. And still, I fall into this idea. It's like ingrained in my brain that I have to be at a desk from 8 to 5 or from 9 to 5, whatever. And it's like, I'm going to take a lunch break. It's like, what the hell is that? Like, I work for myself. I can go and like just not work this afternoon. I mean, I do have deadlines and I do have people that I'm, needing to, do things for and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's interesting because like I think one of the things that I've seen with my friends is that if they do work for a company that they used to be in person and now they're at home, like they're kind of slowly realizing that they can actually like put their Slack on hold for a bit. They don't need to be chained to a desk. I think that's a really hard boundary to break away from though, because there's so much fear based in it. It's like, oh my gosh, if my boss doesn't think I'm at my desk for 8 hours a day, what's going to happen? But I would hope at least with like this post COVID world and beyond that like we can kind of get beyond the 8 hour day that was actually enacted during the Industrial Revolution like 100 years ago.
Right, exactly. Well, and like we've talked about, the idea that you now have an opportunity, if you have a flexible enough work life, that you can listen to your body during the day. Like, oh, I am most awake and most productive at this time of day. And at this time of day, my mind wanders and I want to go for a walk. I'm going to go do my laundry. I'm going to walk away from the screen and go do something and come back to it later. Like, that you can actually work the way that your body wants you to work, not the way some jackass has decided that you have to work because he wants to control your life.
Yes. Yes. Just yes. That is a mic drop. I mean, truly, like listening to your body. I know we've talked about this on different episodes before, but it never gets old. Like, if your back is hurting because you're sitting for too long, or if you're thirsty, or if you have to go to the bathroom and you're holding it until you send the last line of your email, like,
Oh my God.
I mean, I think for me, it's like that is me. I'm just describing myself here, but like it's like basically, I I mean, sometimes I'm like, wait, why? Like, why am I doing this? Like, I can seriously get up, go to the bathroom, grab a drink of water, come back, and then I'll actually feel more productive. Like, those are things I think I have to constantly remind myself of because my body doesn't always yell at me initially. It's like the whispers.
Yeah. And the idea that your body will keep poking at you in different ways until it finds the thing that you will respond to. So things escalate. Like, whereas if you've just taken a break, just chilled out a little bit, as soon as you heard it, it would have been better.
Yes, exactly. And then it would actually be easier to do in the future versus just like responding to crisis. One of the things I learned in 2020 was that busyness is not always the right way of living. And that's something that I've always done. Like I'm like a hyper busy person, and not necessarily like busy for the sake of being busy, but just like I'm just so interested in so many things. Like I'm interested in traveling here or visiting this person or going to this event or like taking this online class that I don't have any time for. And like, and the truth is that I have done all of those things. Like that's basically how I've lived my adult life, and it has not worked. It just every year I'm like, got pneumonia again. Sweet. So like, like that kind of stuff. And so in 2020 though, what's interesting is that like I didn't even have the choice. And so there was something about that I want to carry into 2021 when things, hopefully, fingers crossed, start opening up. I just think that there's something about that in terms of like really listening to like what I actually want to do and doing only those things, and like scheduling time for rest also.
Yeah, and saying no to things. So like, I mean, I feel like 2020 is the year of the universe telling us no. Like, oh, you want to go out? You want to do this thing? Yeah, how about no? And us telling our families no, we can't see you for the holidays or whatever it is. I feel like lots of no in 2020. And I feel like I would also like to carry into 2021 the ability to just say no and to not have to have a reason. I feel like as I think about 2020, that's the other thing I appreciated is that like having that built in no, no, I'm not going to come to your birthday party. Are you, first of all, are you out of your goddamn mind for having a birthday party in 2020 after March? But no. And I don't have to tell you why, because I'm just going to send you this New York Times graphic of COVID hotspots and where you sit on it, right? And so I think the ability to just say no, I'm not able to come, and not have to come up with the like thing that we all do, like something came up, I'm just not feeling up to it. What are the other good ones? I'm trying to
Right.
think of
It's like,
like,
I'm
yeah,
so sorry. Like, I don't mean to cancel or whatever it is. Like, it's always the like copious apology. And again, just talking
yes,
about myself. But like,
same.
like, it's like, the truth is like sometimes no, I mean, the whole idea of no being a complete sentence, like that's something
Yeah.
that, it's interesting. I love that idea for myself. And I love that what you're talking about. And I found myself on the receiving end of that a week ago,
Oh,
where I had a Zoom. Uh, I'm really trying hard not to identify people. So let's see, a Zoom event. So this was like a celebration on Zoom. And I asked someone to come, and it was kind of someone who was pretty important to the event. And she just said no. That's it.
oh,
And I actually didn't understand really. And so I was like, oh, well, if you want to, I can change things a little bit. I thought maybe she didn't say why. She just said no. And I was like, I can just change things. And like, I started making these stories in my head, like, well, why is she saying no? And so I offered her an alteration of the plan. So maybe she would say yes. And then she just doubled down on, no, that's not going to work. And here's the thing, Karen. So like that is really a beautiful example of like just owning your
right.
no. It's okay. Like I realized that it was on me that I was making up these stories in my head. The truth is, of course, I learned later after a lot of investigation because I was like, dealing with my own projection, that actually there's nothing wrong with her. She just didn't feel like it. And that's okay. And so it's like it's just interesting because I think that that's what I want to do as well. I have this constant fear of letting people down. I'm realizing that is very, very pronounced. And I don't think I really realized it until 2020 because I quite frankly, I would say yes to pretty much everything to my own detriment. And so now because I did say no, or I wasn't always available for different things, and I'm progressively trying to get better at saying no, I realize that voice comes up in my head a lot of like, oh, this person isn't going to like you as much, or this person's going to be really disappointed. And I remember so well, um, and I remember very vividly in one of Elizabeth Gilbert's Magic Lessons podcast episodes a few years ago, where she was talking about how she started saying no in her own life. Like she learned this, like, I think at least like well into her 40s. And one of her friends turned to her one day and was like, you know what, Elizabeth, you've changed a lot. And she's like, good, I'm glad. Like she like totally owned it. And I've really thought about that a lot in these past couple of weeks, because that's what I want to do as well.
I love that. So hard. Well, and I'm reminded of, I was at an event where they were talking, of course, this was the before times. There's a person in Chicago who throws, or used to throw, cuddle parties, like platonic, like kind of like not gender specific, not sexuality specific, because it's not about sexuality. It's about sensualness and like comfort, but like literally cuddle parties.
So like you're just hugging each other basically.
Yeah. And like cuddling together.
That's
Yeah.
nice.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know it's very sweet. And they were talking about the ways in which you negotiate cuddling with someone you don't know, and the way that you approach them, and that when you approach somebody and the answer is no, that the way that they train themselves to respond is, thank you for taking care of yourself.
Oh.
Right? Thank you for acknowledging your own feelings. And I mean, I saw that over a year ago, obviously, and it has stuck with me because it really is a beautiful response. And the person doesn't really owe you an explanation, and they really are taking care of themselves, and they don't really have to take care of you.
Yes. Yes. Totally. Totally. Yeah. That's such a good example of just like also a good way of responding when someone says no. Like just like to know what to say. Like, hey, that's great. Like good for you to take care of yourself. Like I remember I had a phone date with a good friend of mine early in COVID, and I was really struggling, like mentally struggling. And I told her, I didn't want to cancel, but I knew that if I showed up, I wouldn't be my, like a good version of myself. And so I texted her and I did explain myself. I said, I'm not feeling very good. Like I just really need to, take a bath or do something else for myself. And she's so loving and wonderful that she was like, good for you to take care of yourself. But I think that like, even without the explanation, it's okay to say that. Like without the explanation, just be like, okay, cool. I hope you're doing well, or whatever it is. Like you don't need to feel like you have to explain yourself. That was a safe enough space for me to say how I actually was doing, and for her to receive me with love and safety. But like a lot of times, like you just don't want to do shit, and like that's okay.
Oh my God, it's totally okay.
Yeah.
That is definitely something to take into 2021. Like it's okay to say no, and that and it's okay to be on the receiving end of no. I totally it resonates with me so much what you're saying about the projecting, about why somebody says no and what you've done wrong and all of the things.
Totally.
And it's just like,
yeah,
it's just no.
You're right. Like I think that's a lesson I'd like to bring into this year as well, is to not project. Like that's like I need that tattooed on my body. Like you don't know what other people are dealing with, like that quote about like you never know what, like battles people are facing. I do feel hopeful about this year. I do feel hopeful about like I think that 2020 was such an acute learning year for all of us, that hopefully those learnings can enhance our lives this year. I hope.
Yeah, and I will add a disclaimer that if you feel like you're walking out of 2020, you didn't learn shit. If you were walking out of 2020 just like barely holding it together, that's okay. That is also totally fine. I feel like you and I, Katie, had 20 weeks of hanging out with each other. We both are in therapy. We both have gone into this as like, after we recovered from the shock of it, really have tried to make sense of it. But not everybody is there. I feel like there are people just like who stumbled into the finish line of 2020. And I feel like if you're coming into 2021 feeling like what the fuck just happened, that's also totally fine. I mean, I also feel like what the fuck just happened.
Yes. And we see you, and it's okay that you feel that way. Like, again, it's okay not to be okay. And like to be stumbling into 2021 you know, just like with your clothes ripped and like you're just like bags under your eyes and you're like wearing different color socks and shoes, slippers, whatever. We see you. It's okay.
We see you, and some days we are you, and we love
Yes.
you, and we want you to be okay.